Right, guys, welcome to Off Camber, episode 5. This is TC, and we are recording on a Monday night post-China GP, and we've got another guest, Shane here. Welcome to the Off Camber pod, mate. Thanks for coming on.
Pleasure to be here.
No, mate, the pleasure's all mine. Pleasure's all mine. So, pretty much this is our China review. We'll look at our takes from the weekend and talk about what went on, because it was a pretty interesting race, I'd say. Tell me your initial thoughts on it, and what did you make of, all the action?
There really wasn't much.
Yeah, okay.
All we had was when Leclerc drove into the back of Hamilton.
Yeah.
When he went over that curb.
Yep, okay.
About all we had.
Yep. Okay. Well, what I like to look at in races like this, especially during the, in the middle of a Grand Prix that's perceived as boring. I think we were on Facebook, I was telling you about this during the race, when people are posting that, it's a boring race, there's no overtakes and stuff like that.
There's a bit of a famous character in that group,
yeah,
isn't there?
Yeah.
We're giving him a shout out.
But pretty much, races like this are a good chance to look at other things that go on in the, in terms of the cars and stuff. So this race was really a tyre wear race. And
strategy was a huge one there.
Yeah, so basically graining was an issue for a lot of the cars throughout the sprint as well as the Grand Prix, but in the end the cars were able to go off on one stop. Now, that's sort of what the point of an interesting, that's like a different interesting perspective that I like to look at when watching a race where there's, say, less action and stuff, because there's no overtakes, there's no, blistering fast laps. Everyone's sort of cruising around at 80%. So, you sort of start to look at, okay, what else is going on? What's the strategy? Who's going to do a two-stop? Because we saw that the V-carbs, they did a two-stop, which obviously fucked them.
Didn't pay out.
Nah. But they bowled a huge wide there. Huge.
Front wing breaking down the main straight.
Yeah. So, but I mean, their pace wasn't terrible, but overall the strategy, they were sort of the ones that were like, hang on, why is everyone not doing a two-stop? But
Yuki was going good before that as well.
Yep. Yuki's been bloody quick, and we'll talk about that in a bit, but yeah, so they sort of went that two-stop route. Everyone else, it was sort of a wait and see what everyone else does. But in the end, usually those races turn out to be a one-stop because everyone's just pushing further and further into the race. And that's the other thing with graining. Graining is obviously when the tyre starts to delaminate and flake because of temperature and wear. And the good thing about graining and what makes it interesting is that the drivers can sort of, pass through that wearing phase.
Yeah, I think Lando.
Yeah, exactly. Like
he
what you
came
saw
out and said,
in...
It's all good now.
Exactly. Lando's race, and then also Hamilton in the sprint race, they can sort of manage that graining. And once you get through that, the tyre can sort of bounce back. Not like a huge lockup where essentially you shave off one bit of the tyre. Graining can sort of be driven... It can be driven out in a way that is manageable. But
just a teething issue for the drivers.
Yeah, that's it. So anyway, that was pretty much the crux of it. We also had a disqualification. So it was Leclerc, Hamilton, and Pierre Gasly.
Gasly.
So they were all disqualified for being underweight. Probably fuel, or it was...
Hamilton was skid board.
It's okay, yeah. So I got underweight and skid block wear. So it has happened. The last time I think it happened was Vettel's. George Russell. George Russell's win last
40
year.
Minutes after the podium.
Yep. And then in 2021, Vettel's podium in Hungary. Remember when he came P2 and then he got disqualified after the race.
That was when Hamilton started from the pit lane.
Yeah, that's it. That was that race. Couple of big headlines that have come out after the race. We've got Lawson, obviously in the rumor mill to be dropped. he's in shit. He's in shit. He's bowled a few wides on the first few Grand Prix, and what do you think? Like, is he down for Suzuka, or is he going to stay in there?
Well, Red Bull have already committed. They paid Checo out.
Yep.
If you're going to let him prove himself somewhere,
Yep.
why not let him prove himself where he's driven the most? On the entire F1 calendar,
Yep.
it's Suzuka.
Yeah.
We saw him in real life in the Super Formulas.
Yeah, that's it.
It was quick that weekend.
Yeah. 100% agree there. Suzuka, obviously being in Super Formula, Lawson has history with Suzuka, and he hasn't raced at Australia or
China.
So
He's done supercar laps in Albert Park.
yeah, but that's not an F1 car, so it didn't translate, judging by last weekend anyway.
Nah.
So Suzuka, I'm on the same page there. Suzuka, give him a shout in Suzuka. Let him go to a track he's comfortable. Let him. Obviously, his confidence is down because the Red Bull's a shite car to drive. If you're not Max.
Yeah.
So give him a shot in Suzuka. Let him see how let him see how he fares on a track that he's comfortable with, and then you can maybe start to look at him. But fuck, these rookies are judged early nowadays. So
Well, I mean, we saw with Checo last season where he had a shocking season, got to Baku, and he was on four. It was a podium.
Yeah.
Or was he fourth? It was a decent result compared to the rest of the season.
Yeah.
And then he tangled with signs.
Yeah, shut the bed. Shut the bed.
No, that was all signs there.
Yeah. But another point that has been talked about, it was talked about a little bit before China as well, coming up into the season, is the V10s. And I saw a report that they're going to be back as early as 28/29. What are you? Where are you standing on this? Like with the V10s, it's a bit controversial because obviously we've got Cadillac now as a manufacturer and Audi, and I guess sort of what's brought them in is that hybrid power unit, right? So where do you sit with the fans want? Where's the compromise, and how is it relevant in the automotive industry?
Where's the compromise in the hybrids, or where's the compromise in bringing the V10s back?
Well, because obviously we've got Formula E, which is electric, so you can't keep going more electric than what.
Yeah, there's only so much.
Then they're just Formula E, right?
Yeah.
And we've a large reason we've got this support from the big manufacturers is because of the relevance to their emissions plans and the engines that they want to develop, right? So small capacity hybrid engines are what they want to sink money into, these big companies, right?
Yeah, low displacement.
So how does that play into F1 saying, right, we want to go back and make fucking V10 engines? Where does that sit with them? Like, are they going to still support that and stay in the sport, or are they going to?
Well, I feel like for a team like Audi, they've got so much history in motorsport. Obviously, they don't have history in F1.
Yeah, that's true.
But categories are huge,
of course. But as in the fact that they'd have to go back an hour, right? All these guys are making pushes for electric. You got Mercedes, Audi, their Cadillac are making electric vehicles, but now they're going to say, all right, we've got to push back and go into
take a step back.
Yeah, we're going to go back to V10s. Like, is there a chance that they lose that support, which they've recently got, because of this change in engines? Like, that's sort of where the sports organisers have to look at, and are they going to keep that support because they want to just stay in F1 to be in F1, or are they in F1 to build that technology and reap the benefits of that at the same time? So it'll be interesting to see how that sort of unfolds, because
I reckon, I don't feel like this is new news to us.
Yeah.
But to these manufacturers behind the scenes, I'm sure they will have to have known something.
Surely. But
it wouldn't have been something that was just brought, V10s now.
Yeah.
And then everyone back in their head office is like, throw these plans away.
Yeah, we'll see. But anyway, enough of that. We'll get on to the race predictions now. So Manul, believe it or not, got one right. And he predicted pole for Piastri. So Piastri did a good job in qualifying and obviously stuck it on pole. Norris aborted his lap. I had Verstappen for pole position, well off. The Red Bull was nowhere this weekend.
Especially on the Sunday.
Yeah, they did not have any pace whatsoever. I had Lando for win. Manul also had Lando for win, so I think that's a reasonable guess. Lando did show pace in the race, but it wasn't enough to get them to swap or, get him to do a different strategy. There was towards the end of the race where Lando was a little bit threatened by Russell because Russell was coming up on him, and if they were going to have to make that second stop, there was a little bit of a threat of George Russell undercutting. So that was the only issue that I saw there. But Piastri was just great. Race winner. He's on the board after a poor outing in Australia. Yeah. So I'm fucking thrilled. I'm biased, but I'm thrilled.
It's what you want to say.
So, yeah, what do you think of Piastri's race? Like, tell me from your perspective, what did he do well and how he got this win?
Well, we just got to see how good he really is in clean air.
Yeah.
Because obviously he doesn't have the years that Norris has in the sport.
Yep.
So he probably doesn't have as much, what would you call it, experience driving in the pack or following a car for as long as he's expected to.
Yep.
But in clear air, he showed that he's a gun.
Yeah, no.
Showed he wouldn't crumble there.
Absolutely. He did the one thing that was sort of, I guess, a little concern for me was that tyre wear. Obviously, last year had a bit of issues with that. He's still obviously good, but it wasn't his strong suit. And I think he really did well to show that, he could make the tyres last. Obviously, in clean air, it's a little bit easier, but he showed that he held his nerve, and we know him as a cool, calm, collected driver, and he completely showed that this weekend. So super impressed by him. Class drive, I've backed in Sainz again, and I've bowled a wide. I've bowled a huge wide. No purchase on that because he, I wouldn't say had a terrible weekend, but the Williams was a bit nowhere. So, and I feel like in the race, there wasn't a lot of overtakes, obviously, as we talked about. So once you're in that pack, even like in the sprint race, we saw, once Lando got into that pack, there was just no getting out for him. So essentially, it was all done with tyre wear and pit stops, the overtakes. So
it was a big strategy battle.
Yeah, 100%.
Sunday.
100%. So the run wide drive, I did have Alonso, who did DNF, but
through no fault of his own.
As we were talking about, it wasn't as clear cut as that because it wasn't his fault. So there's not really much to say on that. Hulkenberg was Manul's run wide, which he did. He was nowhere. Bortoleto outperformed him, so I'd say that's another dub pick. And he had Alonso as his class drive. So once again, Alonso couldn't really do shit. So no fault of his own. So we can't really say much there. So we'll go through the weekend now and talk a little bit about the race in a little bit more detail, sort of some observations we had. McLaren looked good in practice, and immediately it was Ferraris looked a lot better, which was good because that's what we wanted to see last weekend. Now that Hamilton and maybe Leclerc are feeling a little bit better, what do you think they can do?
Well, I think what we saw in that sprint quali was... Well, what they were saying was they had a different package for the sprint quali. They changed the car for the race quali and the race. And Hamilton and Leclerc both said, we've not done the right thing here.
Yeah.
They both wanted to go back.
Yeah.
They tried to make the car quicker.
Yeah.
But
no, 100% agree. It's crazy how, and this is what I want to really, hammer home to everyone, especially if you're new, how fine the margins are in the sport that so quickly, a day can change the pace. I mean, if you look at the sprint race, McLaren, they bottled the start, Ferrari took the lead, and they ran away with it in that race. And yeah, there was a bit of pressure from behind, but Hamilton was excellent. And then yet the next day in the Grand Prix, there's no pace. So all these little setup changes and little decisions that they make to try and improve often can, undo the car and lead to a result like Ferrari had this weekend where they were dominant almost in this sprint race and then, yeah, collapsed in the Grand Prix. So that was really interesting to see. But yeah, so what about McLaren's race in the sprint
On
race? What
the
did you think in the sprint race?
Well, I feel like they through the traffic, not obviously with the way the track was,
Yep.
no one could go too well through traffic.
Yep.
Even the McLarens, they struggled getting around people.
Yep. Yeah, I think another thing we found was that they were talking a little about in the broadcast as well was the minimum tire pressures that they were setting.
It was
in,
1 psi. They
yeah,
brought it
so
up by.
so they were too high. So essentially, what was happening was the teams were waiting in the pit lane with the cars just with outside the blankets to try and reduce those tire pressures because that was in the qualifying and in the race they couldn't get them firing, and then all of a sudden in the sprint race they have to go 20 laps, and then you start to run into these graining issues. So it was a really interesting weekend for the tires, the tire story. But then we move on to the race. There was a lot of obviously discussions about the tire strategies. Initially, everyone was thinking it was going to be a two-stopper. So that would have been medium, hard, hard. Pretty much everyone started on the mediums.
I think when they saw those signs, we started on the hards.
Yes, yeah.
Then they were like,
yeah,
oh, okay,
yeah,
maybe the mediums aren't the way to go.
exactly. And this is what people were trying to, figure out who's going to try and do a one-stop, who's going to hang out there. So Albon went long on his medium tyres, but the reason we thought it was going to be a two-stop is because Albon went super long, and by the end of his stint on the mediums, he was fucking cooked.
Yeah.
So it was sort of like this thinking of, well, hang on, Albon couldn't go this long, so how are we going to make a one-stop work? But in the end, obviously, as we know, the hards, they just kept performing. Drivers were able to out-drive that graining process, which was on the left fronts a lot, which was the worst tyre. And, yeah, they were just sort of holding out on each other to stay out and, manage the hards, which is what they all did. What do you think about Leclerc on the, swapping positions with Hamilton? Because what was happening was Hamilton and Leclerc were, one, running alongside each other, and Leclerc obviously had the pace with a fucked wing, mind you, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Could he have snagged Russell if he, got ahead of Hamilton earlier? Do you reckon?
Big if, but
Because he was quick, so
Yeah.
he did have that pace in him. It was surprising though that he was able to keep going like that with the wing because you saw it looked pretty terrible, honestly.
because even the drivers, they were surprised that he was able to kick. He didn't even change the wing.
Yeah,
They had no intention of changing it.
Yep, absolutely. But then, as the story went on, they swapped Leclerc. He was quick, but in the end, couldn't get Russell. I think, damn, they should have swapped him early because Hamilton was a bit reluctant to swap, and he was sort of, in the mindset of, hey, I'm catching the guys in front. Why am I swapping? But it was evident in the end that Leclerc's pace was just so much better. So I feel like they would have benefited from swapping the drivers around, but they didn't. So anyway, they all stopped. They all ran the hards. McLarens were out 1-2. Russell and Verstappen running their own race. Everyone was sort of running their own race at the front. And then towards the end of the race, Russell and Verstappen did pick up the pace a little bit. Russell did close in on Norris, and in the end, Norris's brake pedal went long, if you remember, and it was actually very tight at the end. Norris only ended up
It was
beating
a
him by
1.7 at the end of that,
1.7 seconds.
but they started it out as like a 3.4 at the start of that last lap.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that was cooked. I was actually thinking that Russell was going to get Norris, but in the end he didn't.
It
So
reminded me of Silverstone in 2020
yeah,
when the Mercs blew I think it was the front left tires.
yeah. So that was one of those weekends. Same thing where the tires graining issues all
It was a
weekend.
hot day as
Yeah,
well.
usually in hot temperatures, that's when it occurs. But yeah, Hamilton blew a tire,
Finished the race on three
finished
tires.
finished the race on three tires. Yeah, that was a banger, another banger race. Um, and something else to note was Haas with the disqualifications. Ocon ended up a nice P5. Yeah, he ended up P5.
Yeah, I think that double points
So
finish.
yeah, and actually so did Williams.
Yeah,
So Albon ended up 7th, Sainz ended up 10th, and Stroll also got in the top 10. And Behrman also, I think, had a really good weekend. Definitely a good recovery drive. He showed he was very quick, and he didn't. Yeah, he had a bit of a faultless drive, which I think he needed because
he's up and under on Lawson.
no, I didn't. I didn't. What happened there
Switch back into
on
the hairpin.
the turn 14 hairpin?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, I think he needed that weekend to sort of bounce back after Australia and feel better about his, driving, and a points finish will do that for you in F1.
especially
So,
in a Haas.
100%, 100%. And Bortoletto, as I said, finishing ahead of Hulkenberg. And then Doohan, obviously, if you saw 10-second penalty for,
Almost 20.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it
they
was
were
a bit,
looking into him for
yeah.
a second time.
So, look, all good and well for hard racing. We love hard, clean, and fair racing around here. But it was unfortunate that he did that because he copped the 10, and then he actually defended pretty well after that, other than the other mistake he made, which almost got him another 10
Yeah,
seconds. But, he's still young. He'll learn. So hopefully they keep him in that seat a little longer to prove himself as well. And yeah, overall was another, I think it was probably perceived as a bit of a boring race as for the masses, but I think it's a good, chance to look at, hey, this is what else goes on in a race when it's not particularly like overtaking heavy, which I think is something that is always interesting to watch.
you get to see all the little niche things in the sport that make
100%.
huge differences that
100%.
you won't see in a race like Australia,
Yeah.
where it's just chaos. You got
Yeah.
a safety car every
Yeah.
20 laps. You have a safety car.
Yeah.
You don't
Yeah.
see all these minute details that teams put in.
Yeah, and obviously running a race like with safety cars and crashes and overtakes is always fun, and we're always getting those a lot in the last 2 years, which has been great. But races where it's just green flags, good, hard, green flag running, that there's time management, there's pit stop strategy. I know aren't always the most interesting, but they're a different type of race, and there's still really good stuff that's going on. So a lot to learn and enjoy watching in those races, because you might not have your eyes glued to the screen the whole time, but you want to keep tabs on, Lando Norris is pulling up to Piastri now. Does Piastri have more pace in him? Because that was happening. Norris was sort of pushing him along, and it was sort of asking the question, does Piastri have more pace, or is he out? Is he out of rubber? Is he has he ruined his tyres or stuff like that? So it's always good to think about those things. And that's what definitely makes me come back to F1 every week. So Yeah, that's. Do you have anything else to add on that? Any other observations that come to your mind for the weekend?
No, not really.
Um,
Back to the racing balls.
yeah,
What are you building your front wings out of?
yeah. That was another
Front wing
bright.
broken under braking.
Yeah, so that was interesting because we saw that how it happened. They did show us on the broadcast feed. Wow, like fully under load on the main straight coming to turn one, and it
Yeah.
just disintegrated. So that don't know what happened there, but very strange stuff. But it was also good to see Hamilton get a win back in the sprint race. I think that was something that was
Good for
good.
the heart.
Yeah, good to see. Pulled on the heartstrings, and it was good to see him, a little bit dominant like that, like he sort of was, because he hasn't won for a while. So it's
Yeah.
good to see. It's good to see, and we're obviously happy that Oscar's taking the dub. Very, very Australian bias on that one. So that's always good news. But yeah. Any other things to note for Suzuka, I guess. What to look out for, or any other thoughts? Negatory.
Nah, none.
Okay, all right.
Other
No,
than the big story, it's gonna
yeah.
be
I think the overarching thing is just don't get Lawson out of the seat after two races.
yeah.
Like, sure, he can go back into an Alpha Tauri, sorry, second V carb,
Yeah.
and learn. But like, yeah, you signed him at Red Bull for a reason. Let him just try and get into that car. Obviously, it's a hard car to drive, so let him get into it a bit and see how he goes at a track that he's comfortable,
Yeah.
I guess.
They've given everyone else at least half a season.
Yeah, so
Gasly, they
yeah.
gave him until that break in the middle of the year.
Yeah, yep,
Then they put Albon on.
yeah. But
So
no, yeah, it is what it is, and we'll see how it develops. But no, it'll be definitely one to look forward to, Suzuka. So we're very keen for it.
And lines up with our timeline as well very well.
Actually, yeah, yeah.
It's the last one of the year until Vegas.
So these first three have been really,
yeah, they've been a treat on a Sunday.
Yep. So we're keen to enjoy the last one of those for like half a fucking year.
October, I think, is
The next one that's at day, like a day
Vegas,
race.
yeah.
Yeah. So that's all we've got for you today, guys. Appreciate you listening. We'll see you next week for our our midweek break from F1. We've got a weekend in between next weekend. So we're going to come on and talk some shit about some other topics regarding F1, and that'll be a bit more of a relaxed piss take. So I'm looking forward to it, and we'll see how we go. Thanks for coming on, Shane.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, pleasure's mine as always. This is TC. Thanks for watching off Camber. We'll see you next week.